Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here, back here. I'm so jet-lagged, but I'm happy. As Ed said, I'm a Google developer expert for Angular team and web technologies, and my name is really, really hard to pronounce. And there's a research, I don't know who did that, but if people can't pronounce your name, they don't believe in you. So I changed my name on Twitter to Ice something. If you remember the first 3 letters, you're fine. And I really enjoy putting dinosaurs around. If I can't find them, then I can put augmented reality dinosaurs around. So AngularConnect is the right place for me this year. Just want to give you an overview. What we are going to talk about today is what is available, the web APIs that makes the XR possible, WebXR, and geolocation, because the XR experience that we are going to create is depending on the location. And the other part of this talk is about how to integrate the APIs into Angular and creating real-time applications, and most importantly, creating reusable component libraries. You can find my slides at bit.ly WebXR2018, and you can find all of the code and much more than the things that I'm able to say today on my GitHub. And the live demo will be available on Immersive Web, that app. So thank you for coming here. And some of you might wonder why this is augmented reality and WebXR at the same time. So I just wanted to give you some overview. So we have reality where we are now, and we have the virtual reality where everything is made up, everything is 3D, everything is rendered. And augmented reality is something in between. And the web APIs that we have were called WebVR, but then they're changed to WebXR device APIs to enable augmented reality experiences on the web as well. So this is reality. If you are having a surgery, if you are going to get amputated or anything on that you have 2 of, this is what people do. And till the very last minute, until you go into the surgery room, people ask you many, many times, like, which side it is. I've been there twice, and it's a horrible experience. But recently, in the United States, Food and Drug Administration approved Microsoft Halo glasses, which is an augmented reality glass. What you have is real-time information right in front of you just by wearing a glass. So now, when you go into surgery, people have so much more information than what you write on your own body. And virtual reality is also part of it. So this is a brain scan of your brain, and then the surgeons can walk through in your brain in every level, and if they wanted to find something, they will find it there. It's not just games and entertainment, and there's so many great applications that we can create with the WebXR. And today is the time to create it, because right now there are hundreds of millions of devices that have the capability that we are not taking full advantage of. And relevant content at the right time and right place is very, very important. And lastly, web is very important to me, although our devices, Android and iPhones, are so much more capable when it comes to creating 3D content. But web is very important because it's available to everyone. So if you want to create something, where do you go today? WebXR is available on Chrome Canary, and the rest of it is available under a few flags. This is what you do. You type in Chrome flags WebXR, and then there's WebXR hit test, and you can enable developer tools experiments to be able to debug your application very well. So WebGL is very much in use everywhere and available in every browser, but WebXR support is unfortunately not there. And the other thing that we can do today is, if you're using Chrome, one thing that you can do is you can sign up for urgent trials, and that allows every user that comes to your website to have this experience without having to enable any of the flags, which is a really cool thing. And we are developing some WebXR polyfills, Mozilla is developing, and then the immersive web is developing. So some of the capabilities that are not implemented by some of the browsers will be available by using the polyfills. And lastly, the thing that we can do, and we must do in any case, is having a progressive web experience. If your user comes into your website and they don't have the device to be able to see the 3D content, they can just click around with the 3D and then use their mouse. And if they have an XR device, they can have the same experience in the XR, and then AR is the other part of it. And there's a lot of tools today out there. Although everything is pretty new, we still have a lot of open source resources and open source libraries. And one of them here on top is A-Frame. It's a very easy-to-use declarative language, and it's really, really nice. But I really like 3JS, so that's what we are going to use today. And Poly, on the left-hand side here, is an open source low polygon model library. So you can take any of these models from there for free and use it. And it has a great API. So why am I using 3JS? Because 3JS is very flexible. A-Frame, although it's really, really easy to use and really nice, but it doesn't give you all that much flexibility or performance. And also, I think it's really, really fun. So let's be good developers and write some pseudocode. What we need to do when we have this Angular component that we wanted to create for an AR experience is that first we check if the AR is available on the device of the user. And once we know that it's available, entering an AR is going to be an experience. You are going to either touch somewhere or click a button to start the experience. Once the AR is started, we start a session on the device. And in every movement of the user, we re-render the scene that's behind. So what we have is the video stream of the user, what they see, and then we are rendering on top of it a 3D content. And first thing, we check how the device is available, the WebXR is available or not, is by checking those flags that we enabled at the very beginning. For example, the request hit test. And what we render is a canvas with the video stream. And canvas can have multiple contexts, for instance, 2D or 3D. And in this case, we are going to check if the stakes are present. We are going to start our session with this context. And then once the session is available, we're going to start rendering. So WebGL is the 3D graphics library that's available in the browser. And we need a WebGL renderer, which is kind of like render is something like taking a video or a photograph of the 3D thing that you are creating. But we need to make this render to be transparent, to have opacity in the background, so we can render the real world in the background. And we can enable some shadows. Anytime we put a model into our world, we can add some shadows or lighting to have extra reality. And once we set our context, we still have to check if the particular device that your user have is compatible with the session that you're trying to create. Once we have that, we can add add a scene. Well, we can start our scene and then add any objects to our scene. So what I mean by scene is you can think of it as a stage. Everything that you have, every light and every object is going to be held inside this object, which is a container object, basically. And how many of you are familiar with request animation frame? Anyone? No animators around? So request animation frame is available to us in regular JavaScript, but what we have here is specific to XR session. The sessions request animation frame have access to the pose of the camera and also tries to render really fast, 60 frames per second. So what I didn't include here is creating the 3D geometry and materials and mesh, but my first talk here, this is my fourth, was about WebGL in general, not WebXR, so you can watch that on the AngularConnect channel. But one thing I really wanted to give you is that I found this really cool resources that explains how to create more reality by using materials and texture maps. So we are really concerned about the data that we are sending. We don't want to have a very detailed model that we have to re-render constantly with every move of the user. To enable us to have a little bit more sleek experiences, we can bring more reality by using textures or lighting and material. And there are great resources on those links. And I mentioned we are going to use Poly, so I can wow, I want to show you the website, but it's not possible. But Poly has lots of models. Everyone is free to add their own models, but there are some professional models there too. It's developed by Google, and it has a great API. Not only you can download the models, but you can also just make a HTTP request to get the models. And you can even have a little search box on your application, so people can search for any models, maybe dinosaurs in this case, and put whatever thing that they wanted to put that into that location. So to be able to use this API, you have to have an API key from the Poly, and it's very easy, and you have to include that. And once you have that model, you have to add it to your scene. And there's a lot of different formats of the models, and here I'm checking the format is what I'm looking for, because there are with different formats, you have to have different loaders. And if we, how we do the user interaction, have you guys ever used any VR devices? If you are using a very low-end VR device, what you have is you don't have some headset. For example, the Google Cardboard doesn't have anything. You can just pop it in your in a cardboard. And what you use instead of clicking or hand devices is your vision. So what you do is wherever you turn, you cast a light towards an object, and that becomes your selection. Same mentality is available also for AR. And instead of where you're looking at, because we don't have the head position with AR, what we do is where you're clicking is from the point that you're clicking, we are going to be casting some rays. And once we do that, we are looking for some hits all the way through, we are looking through everywhere that light goes through and see if any object is being hit, and that becomes our selection. And there are other cool things that you could do when it comes to interactivity is by using voice. A great library is the resonance spatial audio. So that allows you to create audio that sounds very different and that comes from different places. For example, you can attach some kind of noise to a dinosaur. I don't know how you can do that. And put it on different places. And if you are wearing a headset, the sounds are coming from different places, and you can use that to create great experiences. The rest of the code is, there's just a lot of details, and I didn't want to include it. And this is pretty much the overview and overall, but you can find all of the details on my repo. And let's talk about Angular. Creating UI libraries is too much work, said Raj to me one day. What he meant was, if you're creating a reusable component library, you have to create another repo, and then you have to package it and go back to your project and reinstall it, reuse it. And this is a really horrible thing to do, and that's why we kept repeating and copying and pasting the same code between different projects all the time. But luckily, folks at Narwhal created NX extension. It's an extension on top of Angular CLI, and it's very lightweight. And what it does is it allows you to create reusable libraries and makes few of the other things very easy. And not only that, they created Angular Console, which is a UI that makes it really, really easy to use. So this is Angular Console UI, and I already have the app. And if I click on it, I have a bunch of options here, and these are the things that are commonly being used. So these are some of my libraries, and usually I'm either serving my applications or creating a new component. So these are the most common things. But there's also another view which you can go through all of the Angular's materials schema or Angular CLI schema and choose any of the options without having to remember all of the arguments to it. So let's create a new library. Let's call it AngularConnect AC. Once you name your library, you can either define a directory, and then you can make it publishable very easily. So this is creating a library in the same repository with the application, but you can easily export it and use it, publish it somewhere else. And we have a few other options, and these are all of the options that are usually come with the CLI. And once we click, we generate a new library, and with the same way, you can create a component and service. And the cool part about it is that you don't actually have to remember any of these things, and you have drop-downs and select them. I really do like it. So what happens when you have these libraries? Okay. And another person, John, said, creating UI libraries adds lots of extra code. Because if you're starting to a project and then you start to organize your code so much, people tend to think that it's just too much work and not sure if it's worth it, overly complicating things. And there's lots of UI libraries out there that you can use, and why do I create my own UI library? And even though you have your, if you are using something like Angular Material, for example, to create a data table, you still have to implement the sorting, filtering, headers, or any other thing. And in John's case, he created 12 of them. So at the end, these things adds up. And over time, when you wanted to change anything in your application, then you have 12 of these things that you have to change and manage, and new bugs are created all the time. With NX, and you can do this in any other way too, but this is the way I have been doing, You can create different applications, and in this case, demo for this demo and Code for Good are the two applications that I have. And they're sharing some of the libraries, and they have their own library, own separate libraries. So what we have here is a UI components and UI shell. But I created an extra specific to XR because I can use it for both augmented reality and virtual reality. And the feature library is where I have the specific features with smart components, which has the data and the state in it. So how do we create these components to make sure that they're reusable all around in all of our applications? We use a lot of inputs and outputs and a lot of options. And this was already available to us when we were using AngularJS with directives. We did have all of these options, but it's so much more intuitive now and very easy. We can give default values, and anytime we have to change anything, all we have to do is add to these options, and we don't have to break any other code. And the data that we have in this case is going to be locational data that's coming asynchronously, is going to be in my feature library, which has the smart components with the state in it. And I can pass in this data using the async pipe in my smart components to my view components. But one thing that happens most of the time is people, sometimes we we do use this async pipe many times in many different places in the same component, and that subscribes to the data source that we are using, and sometimes makes multiple calls. So that's something to be mindful of. And the other thing that we are using here for this application is Firebase GeoFire. This is one of the newer applications, and what it allows you to do is to save your data with a geolocation attached to it, and when you need it to query those data, what you can do is give a range to a radius, and then it will calculate to your point anything that's around you. Pretty much what Google Maps is doing, but for your database. So let's see what it does. And this is Firebase's geolocation. What it does, the GeoFire specifically different than the other storage is creates a different data type which you can query with that. One very unfortunate thing with developing for WebXR is having to debug your applications. It's kind of painful. Hopefully, it will get a little bit better in the future. What you do is, if you haven't seen it in your developer tools, you can go to More Tools and then go to Remote Devices. And it will give you all of the devices that are connected. And you have to also enable the developer options on your device. And once you have that, you can enter any URL and reload from here and inspect. So I'm going to start my session. Oh, OK. What we are doing here is looking for unfortunately, my cable is not so far away. I can't move that much. But what we are doing is looking for smooth surfaces to render our creatures. Say hi to the internet. Hopefully, you try it out after the party and put some dinosaurs around. And the dinosaurs are attached with the geolocation information, and wherever you are, we request the same data from the geofire, and then render the dinosaurs. So where to go from here? The WebXR API is being discussed at the moment, and you can be part of it. You can go to Immersive Web on GitHub and create an issue or comment on the issue. And if you're creating something and these APIs are being created for you, you should be part of the conversation. There are a few blogs and a few other resources here. And I have other demos if you wanted to check it out for AR and VR. And thank you so much.